And probably I can be a little bit more efficient in the use of my time because Paula's presentation overlaps to a certain extent with my own. Now, just a few introductory slides about the aging challenge that our society faces. We know that the older segment of the population is the fastest growing across the UK, but actually in Northern Ireland, which traditionally has a younger population pyramid than the rest of the UK, the growth in the pensionable age population is going to be the greatest over the next 30 or so years in Northern Ireland. And of course, as Paula intimated, the trajectory of aging encompasses every domain of our lives, not just health, but within our family and social networks and our households and our income and assets and whatnot. So NICOLA is a relatively new kid to the block, having been invited initially by our cousins in the south of Ireland who run the TILDA study. And TILDA was already underway whenever their funders approached us to put a bid in to develop a sister study to TILDA, which indeed itself is based on the design of ELSA and HRS in the US. Just a little backstory, if I will, a digression on the study name. We, of course, had a lovely name, a lovely Irish name called NIAMH, N-I-A-M-H, but we reckoned that most of the rest of the UK wouldn't quite get it. That stood for the Northern Ireland Aging, Mortality and Health Study, but it had to be changed because most people didn't quite get the acronym. So NICOLA is our largest cohort study in Northern Ireland, round about the same size as TILDA in Dublin, in the south of Ireland, sampling people over the age of 50 living in their own homes. And the instruments and intent is broadly the same as TILDA and in ELSA indeed. So our intent is to repeat the interviews based on a CAPI every 2 or 3 years and a health assessment every 4 or 5 years. Our USP, I guess, are in a couple of areas because of local strengths in the academic department, and that's in the long shadow cast on older people's lives by the civil unrest, conventionally known as the Troubles, and eye health and nutrition and health, which are particular strengths. I say they're particular strengths that informed the early waves, but we did have a broad stakeholder group whom we consulted, including policymakers, whenever it was led down at the first wave. Of course, it was designed to mirror the efforts in the south, the TILDA study in Dublin, which also actually mirrored ELSA in England, which complements the HRS and a family of studies that are now part of IELSA. So the map is very much like the map that Paula showed you earlier. And so the key questions are about how we can maximize and maintain independence as we get older, and how services perhaps have to respond to that, and then consequences for broader society with pensions and the labour market. So you'll see the topics that were in the original CAPI survey. There's no surprises there at the bottom of the slide. They mirror to a certain extent the sorts of themes already covered by Paula. We are finished the second wave in terms of a refreshed sample of 50 to 54-year-olds. And we're just on the cusp of getting the outcome of our bid to our local government installment for a third wave. So just in summary, the first wave had just over 8,000 who completed the CAPI. Another 5,000 completed a self-completion questionnaire, and just under 4,000 the health assessment. Wave 2 also completed a CAPI. I just have to press a button here so that my computer doesn't automatically reboot, if you bear with me, because it's one of these institutional patching devices. So let me just correct that. And then Wave 2 Refresh had an extra 800 people to supplement the younger old. And we were rather late to the variety of initiatives that were taken to collect COVID data from the older people's cohorts across the UK. And so ours was done during 2021, and may say a little bit more about that because we have Andy on the call, Andy Boyd, who looks after the. So this is a summary of the data available in terms of the socio-demographic areas. We have more detail than most of the other cohorts on diet. And as I say, we have more detail than most of the cohorts on eye health for the people that came into the Clinical Research Centre to have a range of eye measurements taken, and I'll show you that in a moment. And there was a more detail taken on the experiences of the civil unrest 30 years ago. So we might prompt some questions on that later on, but our blood samples have measured the same core biomarkers as the UK Biobank. And you can see the particular chip that we used for our genetic and epigenetic data, which is now looked after by Professor Amy Jane McKnight, and that is part of an NIA biomarker network, which is contributing data to that network coordinated by NIA. So I've mentioned the dietary data, which was based on FFQ, admittedly, but there were some validation studies done in complement to that. So we did bring a subsample of people back with biomarkers to try to validate the food frequency questionnaires in more detail. And my colleague, Professor Jane Woodside, has published those validation studies. I'll mention cognitive function because we are part of the HCAP initiative that Paula mentioned, which is a partnership with NIA. And I'll mention the eye health in a minute. Well, actually, it's in the next slide. So what our eye assessments involved were color fundus photographs, but it coupled with coherence tomography, giving multicolor images, autofluorescence, dual wavelength AF, and optical coherence tomography, which allows the depth of the various neural layers in the retina to be assessed. And this is slightly more than what Biobank are doing. And so this has been a bridge to several international consortia because of the quality of the data that we have. Has been published in the field of, at least so far, of macular degeneration and glaucoma, but there's a variety of other papers either with journals or in preparation. This is just a sample. But there's a relatively recent interest in connecting eye health with cognitive health. And so there's a number of collaborations that we've joined because of the more detailed retinal measures that we have. And we're only now looking at our data on cognitive health with these retinal measures ourselves. But we're connected with a number of consortia that are interested in the data. Paula will know that there's a couple of different groups within London interested in epigenetic pathways that reflect aging processes. And so we are a partner of the LifePath Consortium using our mortality and methylation data. And this has been published this is just one of the papers from LifePath. We're not a participant in all of the LifePath papers, but in one of them, they looked at socioeconomic position, education, and lifestyle habits and epigenetic markers and their association with total mortality. And some of the key findings here probably won't be a surprise. Epigenetic markers were independently associated with education and various lifestyle factors, and low education was an independent predictor of accelerated epigenetic aging and mortality. Now, we have a Wellcome-funded clinical research fellow who has just won a Fulbright Award to visit Michigan, who are partners in NIA, to look at the long shadow cast by a variety of early life exposures. Clearly, we're not a birth cohort, and so we're relying on people's memories to tell us about what happened in their early years. But Dr. Potter, who's the Fulbright Fellow, will be collaborating with some other cohorts to collect data on other early life experiences of adversity. In our particular case, what our cohort are remembering are their experiences of the Troubles. And Dr. Potter in particular is interested in looking at cognitive performance and also epigenetic aging and allostatic load. Now, that Fulbright Fellowship has only just been awarded, although her Wellcome Fellowship, she's about a year into the Wellcome Fellowship, but she will be making some trips over to Michigan to partner with her NIA collaborators there. Paula already mentioned that ELSA is a part of HCAP, and we're part of this HCAP family, which is looking to validate a variety of cognitive measures in a number of different cohorts. So this is part of a global venture funded by NIA, and Paula's already described it. Another recent ESRC award is allowing us to connect our participants to a variety of environmental measures, including physical activity data and the built environment data, which is already being curated by Professor Ruth Hunter, because she's a chair of the largely blue and green space funded UK PRP consortium, but also local pollution data. So some very good human geographers who are part of this grant, which is called the SPACE grant. And we're looking for the associations with cognitive function in our cohort. And that's just the logic model behind the SPACE initiative. But the geneticist who curates our genetics data, she came from a background of working on kidney disease. So our genetics samples and our cohort data is being shared with a large international CKD consortium, which she has been a part of for 10 to 15 years. I'll just mention the Troubles again, because Paula mentioned the importance of impact, and the older persons commissioner and the victims commissioner, this is the commissioner for victims and survivors of the Troubles, was looking for data on the potential impact of the Troubles on well-being. And the NICOLA data were provided to the victims commissioner. And this data was quite pivotal in the victims commissioner making some decisions around pensions entitlements, particular Troubles pensions. So that could well be an impact case study that we might talk more about in 2028. But that's relatively recent in the last couple of years, where the victims commissioner used our data for very important decisions about pensions to victims of the Troubles. Here's where you'll find our data. Paula mentioned the UK Data Archive. Not all of the data has been lodged there yet. Certainly CAPI Wave 1 is there. We will be lodging CAPI Wave 2 if it's not already there yet. But we're also part of DP UK, and the Global Aging Gateway was also mentioned. We're in talks at the moment with Chin Cook Lee about a data transfer agreement with the Gateway studies, which has to clear our own university governance first of all. But this is where you'll find the data, and we have Andy to thank. Andy's on the call in reaching out to us to join the LLC consortium, which is sounds like a tremendous platform for the longitudinal cohort resources of the country of the UK that have conducted some COVID questionnaires. And with Andy's help, we're in the process of a linkage venture. We are already linked to deaths and to the cancer registry, but we will be in the process of doing the other health services linkages through the LLC. And Paula mentioned the headline findings of the COVID data. As I said, we're relatively late into sending out the questionnaire. Andy's particular question to Paula was about which particular questionnaires were being used and whether they would be used internationally. Well, we used the one that has been most used, which was developed by other cohorts and the Wellcome Trust. This has now been lodged with the LLC. But the headline findings are also around depression. About 1 in 4 of our cohorts experiencing depression during the pandemic, and slightly worse in towns than in the rural areas. Also, sedentary behavior got worse during the pandemic. There's no great surprises here in these headline findings. And a quarter of our smokers were smoking more, and a fifth of our drinkers were drinking more. So there's no great surprises. I think that bears out what's been found by other cohorts. So there's where we are on the website, and a word to our funders at the end here, if we can just give them a shout out. We're funded originally by Atlantic Philanthropies and ESRC with a little bit of money from the Office of the First Minister. And you'll see a variety of names here leading different aspects of the study. One of the reasons why we were rather late to the COVID field was our project manager was very, very severely ill during the pandemic, not from a pandemic-related illness. And then our scientific officer at the time also got severely ill from COVID. So that's one of the reasons why we were slightly late to the COVID field. So I'll leave it there